Happy Sunday, everyone. Stopping by just for a few minutes to chat a little bit. First things first, I hope every one of y'all are having a productive and a relaxing weekend. Looking forward to a brand new week. Wishing you all a productive week. Wanted to stop by and two things. One, thank you all for the congratulatory comments, remarks, text messages, phone calls, etc. Congratulating hubby and I on the new space. So for those of you who do not know, we opened up an event center, also called Escoviches. That's two doors down from the restaurant. And we did that. We had our first event last Sunday. Took a lot for us to get there, but we got there nonetheless. And I just want to say a special thank you for everyone who wished us well and took the time out of their schedule to call, to text, or to send messages. We really, really, really appreciate it. Second of all, and maybe even more importantly, I wanted to chat a little bit about behind the scenes, right? So a lot of times you'll see people's success, you see the end result, but you don't necessarily see or have insight into what it took for them to get to that place. I believe success is defined and is different for everyone. Each person define what their measure of success is. After all, we are all unique. We are all here with different purposes on the earth. And so success for all of us is different. But a lot of times you don't get to see behind the scenes and get insight into what it takes to get there. And I can promise you, most times it takes a lot of work. I don't know anyone that is successful that wasn't required to do a lot of work behind the scenes. But the behind the scenes work I want to talk about today is not the choosing a paint color. It's not hiring a contractor. It's not lease negotiations or purchase negotiations. All that is important to the process. But for me, the most important aspect of the behind the scenes work that inspires success, that ensures success, that enables success, is the mental work. And so it took a lot for hubby and I to get to the point where we can work together and cultivate a plan in terms of the legacy that we wanted for our family, right? And so his story is his story. He has the freedom to tell his, I'll tell mine. For me, it took a lot, and it started with managing my mental space. Now, for years, I felt like I was wandering through a wilderness without any idea of who I was, right? Who I was in Christ, what my purpose on this earth was, just who I was, right? And so, yes, I had a successful career and still do. Yes, I had a beautiful daughter. Yes, I was able to make certain decisions that put me and my family in a better place. But I felt like the rationale or the reasoning for making those decisions were mostly based on a survival mentality versus a thriving mentality. And by that I mean, I was making whatever decisions I needed to make with integrity, of course, to ensure that I was able to survive. I was able to pay my bills. So for example, hey, I'm going to go after this career, and that career would pay me X amount, and with that X amount, I would be able to pay my rent or pay my mortgage. I should be able to get a car, etc. And so those were survival decisions and not necessarily decisions from a place of authenticity or a place of thriving or strategically like cultivating a plan, a legacy plan for my family. And so I felt like I walked around not really knowing or knowing who I was, much less to even embrace who I was. So I always believed that there was God, but I never always believed in him for me. And my Caribbean people should be able to appreciate this. If you remember, I don't know who experienced this, but I did. When you're going to school, and if, you know, kids are kids, and kids are known to tease and bully other kids. And so I don't know if this story resonates with you, but a lot of times when there is someone that maybe not as pleasing to the eye, you don't want to come out and call the person ugly. So you would you would say, when pretty looks was being given away, that person was at the back of the line. So in other words, by the time them reach at the front of the line, all the pretty looks done and they got the what left. Okay? I was teased that way in school. Yes. As beautiful as I am. Yes. I was teased as a kid that when pretty looks was being given away, I was at the back of the line. So in other words, I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't pretty. And so I use that statement to describe and define my relationship with God at that time. And I often felt for most of my life like when the blessings and the grace were being given, God left me out. I felt left out. I felt abandoned. I opened up my story, my book, Redefining Her, with a story of me as a 4-year-old little girl. And I was either 4 or 5, and I was in the room, one of my maternal grandparents' bedroom, and I was sitting on a bed and I was watching my mother get ready for her departure back to the States. She had just returned to Jamaica at the time to bury her parent. I never knew them. And as a matter of fact, that's my first recollection of seeing my mother. She had left me before when I was just before I turned age 2. And so I grew with my dad for most of my childhood life. And I remember sitting on the bed watching her get ready to, depart back to the US. And as I sat on the bed, and she had this antique brush and comb set that she was using to brush her curls. She had long hair. And I remembered I asked her, I said, Mom, can you leave me that set? It was like a nice little, it was a silverish, but it was an antique brush comb and mirror set. And I remember saying to her, Mom, can you leave that with me, please? And I remember wanting to hold on to it as in remembrance of her, because I knew she was leaving again and I didn't know when I would see her again. And she told me no. Simply no, it wasn't harsh. It wasn't in a rude manner. And as a 4-year-old little girl, I interpreted that no to mean that I wasn't worthy. Hence why she wasn't giving me that brush and comb set and mirror set. I was really in love with the mirror. And that I wasn't enough, hence why she was leaving on the plane again without me. And in fact, I never saw her or heard from her again until I was maybe about 23 years old. And so that affected me most of my life, being abandoned by her. And so I think that subconsciously I used that moment to define who I thought I was. And as a result, it influenced and it fueled everything that I did. How I felt about myself, how I felt about the world, how I felt about my place in the world. And so I meandered for most of my life until I hit 40, feeling like I wasn't enough. And so even though you saw success on the outside, yes, I had a nice home, I had a nice car, I had a nice family, all that stuff, I was unhappy inside. And there's nothing on this earth, no tangible thing that can fill the void of not knowing who you are and not being connected to God and having that relationship with God and allowing Him to define who you are. There's nothing on this earth that can fill that void. And so for me, when I hit 40, I had this big birthday party, was 70s themed. I mean, outfit galore. I had coworkers, I had friends, family. It was a joyous event for me. But then I had a mental breakdown shortly thereafter. Mental breakdown to the point where I cut off social media. I stopped talking to my family. I just went into this isolation. I felt literally like I had a dark cloud over me every move I made, and I was wrestling with that cloud on a daily basis until I succumbed to it. I tell you all about it in my memoir, Redefining Her. Don't want to spoil it for you here if you have not yet read it. And if you haven't yet read it, why not? Anyhow, that was a defining moment for me. And through that rock bottom moment, through that rock bottom season, God actually brought me back to that place as a 4-year-old little girl, watching my mom brush her hair. And He showed me that was that moment that I defined myself. That was a moment where I told myself I wasn't enough. That was a moment where I started to operate as half pint me, which half pint is synonymous with mini me. And so I had to do a lot of work to manage that mental space and to redefine myself as how God created me to be, who He created me to be, right? I had to do a lot of work to redefine me. Hence, the title of the memoir was Redefining Her. Her is the unauthentic her. Okay, so you have to redefine her into the authentic her, which is me. And so I share that with you as a behind the scenes because that was the real behind the scenes work that had to be done so that I could get to a place where I could work alongside with my hubby to cultivate a legacy for my family. I guess the other thing I wanted to say as well was that rock bottom moment was actually triggered by a conversation I was having. It was an argument, a disagreement I was having with hubby. And my response was not powerful. And during that meltdown moment, when I looked to God and I said, God, why? And He literally showed me as a 4-year-old little girl way back when, almost 40 years, guys. As a 4-year-old little girl, where I misdefined myself and started to show up in this world unauthentic to who I am, not powerful, not making power moves, not believing in myself, making survival decisions versus thriving decisions. That was the moment that He showed me. And so the other thing I want to share with you is a lot of times when you are being triggered and you respond to a situation or a person in a way that's not powerful, usually that trigger is an open window to a space that needs healing. That's one thing, right? What do I mean by power responses? Power for me is an acronym, and it represents perspective. So is your response considering the perspective not only of yourself, but of others as well, right? Is your response from a place of optimism, from a place of abundance? Is your response from a place, are you using wisdom, right? Is it from a place of wisdom wisdom garnered from your experiences, wisdom garnered from knowledge, right? Whether you got that knowledge firsthand or secondhand, learning through others. Is your response from a place of empathy for others? Is your response from a place of respect for others as well as for your own core values? So that's what I mean by your power response. So my response at the time was not in power. And God showed me clearly what my issue was. I'd misdefined myself. And I had to correct that. And that required work, the mental space. But easier said than done, okay? For me, there are three primary things that helped me. One, it was surrendering to God and allowing Him to take control. Two, it was actually starting to believe in myself, actually believe in my capabilities, actually believing that I was here for a reason. I had a purpose. I had to believe. Believe is not passive. Believe is active. And three, I hired a therapist and I hired a coach to help me navigate that season, as well as to hold me accountable for my healing, as well as, some of the missions and the goals that I started to cultivate for myself individually, as well as for my family. And so those are the three primary tools that I think, helped me to get to a better place mentally, and that I continue to use this day. Number one, okay? That relationship tight like this, okay? Believing in myself. And yes, I actually do need a new therapist. My older therapist, she moved on to other things. And so I'm actually in search of a new one right now. But I do have a coach. I have two coaches actually that are helping me, holding me accountable, as well as helping me to navigate, certain missions that I'm embarking on. So I wanted to share that with you guys, that, a lot of times you see success and everybody, you just see the end result, and people don't necessarily tell you what it takes to get there. But it takes a lot to get there. And I want to encourage you to believe that whatever goals you have for yourself and your family, that you can actually accomplish it. And so to get there, I think one of the primary messages that I want to send to you is to examine the story that you're telling yourself about who you are, about your place in the world, about the world itself. Examine those stories, because that's fueling your mental space. Who are you? Who you are is not who your family culture told you you are. Who you are is who God told you you are, who He created you to be. And I want to encourage you to get into that space where you allow Him to show you exactly who you are. If you invite Him in, He will come in. So that's what I wanted to share with you in terms of behind the scenes, guys. It goes beyond the tape measure. It goes beyond the paint selection. It goes beyond the construction. The real behind the scenes starts here. And once you get this right and on track, anything you want to achieve, you can achieve. So have a great week. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a productive week. And until next time, ciao.